Hi, this is James Garner with AGGN. I'm here at DragonCon2013 on September 2nd, 2013. I'm speaking with Laura Hawkins, excellent cosplayer, and Laura, you're wearing your fawn costume. What inspired you to create this particular costume?
I have an odd conversation with my mom about reindeer. Actually.
Really?
Yeah. It was a friend and I were talking online, and we were saying what animals we would be. And I asked my mom, if I was a reindeer, what would you be? And she said a llama for some reason. But then I just got hooked on the concept of reindeers because she reminded me of some trip up to Washington where we were driving on a mountain road by Mount Rainier, and there were hundreds of reindeer. And we were stuck for like 30 minutes. We couldn't get to our B&B because of all these damn reindeer.
Wow.
And I just got excited by the idea, and I love the antlers and the hooves, and I wanted to make antlers that could be worn on the head, which I haven't completed yet, but it's on the docket to be completed at some point. But the hooves were more easily approachable, so that was the first thing I made was hooves, because I wanted to do legs and hooves for digitigrade different from the way other people do them. Whenever I see people cosplay fawns or satyrs, or even do full fursuits of any sort of deer or cervid creature, they always do the foam method where they bulk up their legs and it doesn't look natural or lean anymore. And I wanted to be a natural, beautiful sort of fawn. And you know, it just kind of went from there, and I had a friend give me some leather from a shop he used to work in, and just kind of, it just evolved over the course of a few months into a bigger project, and this was the end result.
Now you mentioned you made the hooves with the, you said digi method?
Yeah, well, the whole leg is what's called digitigrade, where basically it looks like you have an extra joint. So when I move, it looks like this is my foot. This is still technically my heel, but when animals walk, they walk on the balls of their feet. So you get that look like there's an extra joint in your legs. And that's what they call it, is digitigrade. That's what cats, dogs, technically deer is a different kind, but when they move it looks like digitigrade. But cats and dogs, wolves, hyenas, lions, things like that. Humans are what's called plantigrade, which is straight line, walking on the whole sole of your foot.
So digitigrade, the digity part is referring to digit, not digital.
Basically, yeah.
Digits,
yeah, or the joints in the leg.
So. Okay. Now, before the interview, you had mentioned that people had mistaken your this particular costume with something else.
Not necessarily that. Like originally, I was calling myself a satyr or satyr, but a lot of people thought, like, I don't know, they would think I was from some anime, or they would think I was a centaur, which is totally unrelated, but I think they just had the terminology wrong for the most part. But satyr or fawn, both pretty similar creatures, so I kind of interchange with whichever people know, because some people don't know one of the terms, so I have to explain by giving them the other. But people ask me what I'm from, and I'm like, I'm just my own character. I just wanted to make a fawn. I just wanted to be part deer.
Well, now, what was you mentioned the fur. What kind of fur is that?
This is a faux fur that I got from fabric.com. It's a luxury shag. It's a 1.5-inch pile. It's a really thick, but it's got a pretty thin backing, so it's easy to sew and has a thin movement to it. The legs are made of the same one, and so are the feet. And the upside to this is I didn't have to worry too much about trimming it to shape, and it looks fluffy and furry, so it gives me that wintry look, which is part of the reason I went for white too. I've never seen people do white. They always do brown or black, and they trim it really short, and it just gets this, I don't know, I don't like that look. I love white's one of my favorite colors. I wanted to go with white, and the longer fur actually looks really good in white. And then I have touches in the collar of another fur, which is actually another faux fabric, which is wolf imitation, gray and white mottled. And I used a little bit here and then a little bit on the tail as well, just to add a splash of color to it. And that was just a recent addition. So as I said, the costume just kind of evolves over time. I add bits and pieces, take things away, change little things as I need to. So, and then also separately, the tail actually is a mix you can see the gray and white mottled here, which is that wolf fur, but this big white chunk is actually the tip of a silver fox tail. So this is actually fox fur here. So a little mix of fox fur and some real fur here. So, and I did my best to kind of blend it, because the color of the natural fur didn't really match, so I tried to blend in the faux fur with it to at least get a little mixing of textures so that you would see it. And also, luckily, the leather being a separator between the two makes it so it's not right away noticeable that it's a different texture and slightly different shade of white. Because that was another issue I originally had, was the original tail that I had was a different shade of white. These leggings are an ivory, so it's more yellow tint. The original tail that I had was a snow white, so it was really blue, and that was a pretty noticeable difference too. But it's more unity now. So.
And how did you make the horns?
The horns were made with 14 gauge steel wire coiled around a steel pole. Then I basically get a single wire, put it through the middle so it curves, take pliers and just start torquing it and twisting it. So it's about that big around the base, and then I pinch it with pliers around a circle so it gets really tiny at the tip. Then I covered it with Sculpey Firm clay, which is the gray one, and I basically baked it and then painted it. Do multiple layers of paint to get the right volume and texture. Always start with black when I'm doing props because that's how you get shadows to work properly when you're painting something. So built up a few different, some bronze, some whites, multiple layers of that stuff, add in some grays to kind of get that more naturalistic look to it. So.
How did you first get involved with costume and cosplay?
In middle school, when I was in the 7th grade, I think I was like 11 or 12 years old, one of my friends introduced me to manga. And my brother had introduced me to anime when he moved to live in Japan when I was a couple years earlier than that, because my brother is 14 years older than me. And so my friends and I got really big into anime and manga, and we went to AWA in 6th grade. And in 7th grade, I saw so many costumes. I'd been to Renfest, I'd seen like the Renaissance clothing and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then when I got to middle school and learned about anime and cosplay, I was immediately enthralled by it. I just loved the idea of it. I mentioned it to my mom and I started talking to her about it. And to her, it was Mardi Gras, because my mom grew up in New Orleans. So she was 100% supportive. And she helped me make my first costume, which was Freya from Chobits. And it wasn't the best, but it was fun to wear. I wore it to school so many times, and no one knew who I was except a couple friends of mine, but it was fun. And I wore it to a convention once, and when I was in high school, a few friends and I actually started our high school cosplay club. And I've always been interested, but I never really had the means or the like the knowledge to be able to get really serious and actually try a lot of new things. So now that I'm a student at SCAD, at Savannah College of Art and Design, the resources and the friends and people I've gotten to know have helped me learn a lot of different methods for all sorts of different things. I mean, I study comics, but so many people around me do so many different things that I was able to learn what I needed to do to be able to make the costumes I wanted to make. So I finally just jumped on it and said it's time.
Cool. What was the most difficult part for this particular costume?
That's a good question. Probably the pattern making for the leather pieces, specifically the top. My original concept was just a straight piece of leather to go around. And I do all my patterns first in heavy canvas because when you're imitating leather, you can't use like stretch satin or anything like that. It just wouldn't work the same. So I have all this heavy canvas left over, so I just used that, and I tried cutting the shape, and I quickly realized that the curvature of a rib cage is so unusual that you have to make the pattern shape curve, and it's a lot more than you would think it is. So I ended up having a friend tape a huge hunk of canvas over my whole torso, and then I just drew on Sharpie with the canvas to try and get the shape, and you know, tweaked it, and then also the other obstacle I had with that was that all the leather was scrap. The reason it's patchwork, I mean, I wanted it to be patchwork to begin with, but the reason the patchworks are as they are is because I had limited sizes in the pieces of scrapped leather that I was supplied with, which was a friend had some leftover from when he had worked in a like one of those Renaissance Festival leather gear making places or something like that.
Okay.
And so he was able to mail me a few scraps that he had left over out of a big bin, and I was able to put it together. But the pattern making was a pretty big obstacle, at least for a mental obstacle. And then the biggest financial obstacle was making the hooves.
Mm-hmm.
So.